Danny is a renowned negotiator with the Chicago Police Department. One day, he was handling a hostage situation. The kidnapper wanted to commit suicide in front of his wife. If he couldn't see his wife, he threatened to kill their daughter. Danny engaged the kidnapper in conversation, discussing topics of interest to him while trying to persuade him to lay down his weapon. The SWAT team leader, Baker, was impatient and demanded immediate action. However, Commander Frost trusted Danny's negotiation skills and gave him a few more minutes. Despite this extension, Danny couldn't convince the kidnapper within the given time. Consequently, Commander Frost ordered a forced entry to ensure the safety of the hostages. Danny pretended to agree to the kidnapper's request to see his wife, but insisted on checking the hostage's condition first. Danny entered the room and lured the kidnapper to the window, bringing him into the sniper's line of sight.
The sniper quickly incapacitated the kidnapper, and he was soon subdued.
The celebration party, colleagues congratulated Danny for successfully rescuing the hostages, once again making him a hero in the eyes of the media. While everyone was enjoying the celebration, Danny's partner approached him with a worried look. He confided in Danny that informant had revealed a secret. A few colleagues had stolen $2 million from the police disability fund. The informant hadn't reported this to the internal affairs because the internal affairs officer, Nebaum, was also involved. Nathan didn't reveal the informant's name. Their conversation was interrupted, and they agreed to discuss it later. After the party, Danny returned home. His wife reproached him for the risky actions he took during the day. She didn't want to lose her husband. Danny reassured her, promising to be by her side every
Danny
day.
received a message. The pager displayed that it was from Nathan, arranging a meeting in the park at 11:30.
Meanwhile, in the park, Nathan was sitting in his car. His pager showed that Danny had arranged to meet him.
At that moment, a person approached Nathan's car and shot him in the head. Then the killer threw the gun and Nathan's pager into the river, disappearing into the night. When Danny arrived at the meeting place, he was shocked to find Nathan dead from a gunshot. Just then, a police car arrived, and Danny was considered a suspect. Subsequently, Internal Affairs Officer Nebaum interrogated Danny. Danny had just lost his friend and was now being suspected as the killer, which made him both sad and angry. He refused the interrogation and left the police station. A grieving Danny attended the funeral and buried his friend. A few days later, one morning, Danny was woken by a knock on the door. Outside were Commander Frost and Internal Affairs Officer Nebaum. The police had found the gun that killed Nathan in the lake. Months earlier, Danny had arrested a drug dealer, but the dealer's gun was not found at the time. Now, this gun had become the weapon that killed Nathan. Internal Affairs suspected that Danny had kept the gun back then. They also searched Danny's house and found a bank statement from an overseas account. The deposit in the account matched the amount of the last embezzled funds. Of course, this statement was planted to frame Danny. These pieces of evidence led the police to believe that Danny had embezzled the funds and then killed Nathan. At the police station, the chief no longer trusted Danny and demanded he hand over his gun and badge.
The looks from his colleagues were filled with suspicion and even anger.
Police station and went to the Internal Affairs Department, and officers there told him that the existing evidence was enough to convict him. The officers gave Danny a day to consider pleading guilty. Danny's lawyer also thought pleading guilty was the best option. Danny was truly out of options, but he had promised his wife that he would be by her side every day. He had no choice but to take a desperate gamble. Danny asked his wife to leave and then went to the office of the Internal Affairs officers. Nebaum. He took Nebaum hostage. Commander Frost arrived to negotiate, but was also taken hostage by Danny. In the office were Nebaum's secretary, Magdi, and a former con artist, Rudy, who were also taken hostage. A Washington team raced to the scene. Surrounding the building, snipers rappelled from helicopters and positioned themselves on the roof. Media and citizens gathered below. The hostage situation also alarmed the FBI, and two negotiation experts arrived to oversee the situation, ready to take over if necessary. As a police negotiator, Danny was well versed in police tactics and strategies. He sealed off the passageways, covered the windows, and cut off all surveillance, leaving the police in the dark about the room situation. Thus, Washington team contacted Danny, who insisted on negotiating only with Chris, a negotiator from another precinct. Chris, like Danny, was an outstanding negotiator who resolved hostage crises without using force. Danny suspected that the corrupt officers who framed him were among his colleagues and didn't trust them. He could only rely on an outsider, and Chris was a perfect
Who knew
choice.
that a white taxi suddenly caught up behind him? There was a pregnant woman about to give birth in the taxi. The driver is in a hurry to take a shortcut to the hospital. The